Guys, good morning.
Oh,
I think your audio.
yeah, I don't hear you, Amanda.
I heard good morning.
And then it cut out for me too. I thought it was just me. No.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So maybe it was the microphone. Hello, guys. Good morning. So I am Amanda, community manager at IMG. Thank you, everybody, for joining today our meeting, our session. We are talking today about SEO testing, and we have two great experts in SEO here. So we have Yayao Shui, he's founder at Floy. So Yayao today he's bringing like a wealth of technical and strategic SEO experience all the way from Taiwan. Yayao has been around the SEO blog for around 7 years and has helped numerous business and website owners achieve top rankings and high traffic. And currently, he's the founder and is CEO of Floy, the topical authority platform, and he created the topical maps unlocked course studied by thousands and publishes the weekly digital surfer newsletter on SEO and AI search. And we also have Caitlin Michael. Sorry, she's a senior product manager at Amazon Web Services (AWS), and she's a digital marketing and SEO leader with experience across in-house agency and consultancy roles since 2010. She currently works with the marketing organization at AWS, where she partners with engineering teams to develop products, tools, and web experiences that improve the customer journey. Previously, she was senior SEO manager at Getty Images, leading teams of SEO strategists and data analysts, and she has expertise in technical and international SEO, content strategy, analytics, and SEO testing. She's passionate about using data-driven approach to drive growth and create better digital experience. Please, guys, be welcome. You want to add something to your experience? You want to introduce something else about yourselves?
No, you did a great job. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Just reading about. So, guys, I would like to start a question about the testing mindset, enterprise versus niche. So in one hand we have Yayao, that he's a consultant. He has his own company, and Caitlin has been working for big enterprise companies. So to kick things off, let's look at the reality of testing in different environments. Caitlin, coming from a massive enterprise sites like AWS and Getting Images, your test environment looks very different from an agile niche site. And Yayao, you work closely with agency and niche site owners. How do you think, how does the approach to setting up an SEO test differ when you have engineering teams and massive traffic versus when you are a solo operator or a smaller agency trying to move quickly?
Would you like to go
Sure,
first?
I'll go first. So, yeah, I've worked at large enterprise sites, but I did start at smaller sites, and a lot of the principles are the same, no matter what size of a website you're working on. With every situation, you're trying to solve a problem. You come up with a hypothesis, and then you start setting up the test for it. With a larger website, you're probably going to be able to run the test faster because you have more traffic to test on, or you have a larger sample size. And with you're going to reach significance faster with a controlled test. But you're still, thinking of a problem, and you could still be, even on a large site, we start simple. We start with, let's just change title tags. Let's change H1s. Those are the same things that you might do on a medium or small site as well. And at AWS and at Amazon, a lot of times we talk about how we are a day one culture. And that means essentially that we want to have every day that you are at Amazon be essentially your first day. And that kind of has this sort of like entrepreneurial startup mentality. We try to not be the behemoth, massive enterprise website that sometimes can move kind of slowly. With SEO testing, you can move very quickly, very agilely. And I like that about SEO testing because it helps you have that day one mindset, that startup mentality of I'm going to move quick to try a hypothesis out and see my results. And a lot of times, if you don't have that sort of SEO testing mentality, you move more slowly. You notice sometimes you have negotiations with other teams about getting your ideas implemented, and that can take a lot of time. But with SEO testing, you can move more quickly, maybe on just a small set of pages to test out your idea. And then you start to gain that momentum and gain that trust of your other counterparts. And you say, hey, I made this idea. I only implemented on a few pages. But look, it had this tremendous amount of growth. Then they start to say, hey, we're going to implement their idea because it has data to back it up. And so I think that even on a larger website, you're still going to be trying to, do a lot of the same things that you would be doing on a smaller website. You just start to, you can see the changes happen faster. And that means you can have bigger wins. You can also have bigger mistakes or losses, right? So you just see that momentum amplified. Go ahead.
Yeah, can I just ask real quick? When you work on creating different tests and everything, say you want to change the title tags, are you sandboxed to like certain areas, certain pages, or do you have that? I mean, do you have flexibility around it?
Yeah, it depends on your setup, but a lot of times you can make changes across many different page types, many pages. Yeah, it depends on what testing tools you're using and where they're implemented. So if you have a JavaScript tag on a certain amount of pages, you'll only be allowed to test on those pages. If you're using a different implementation, they just need to be applicable to the pages that you want to test on.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, for me, obviously I'm working on a much smaller scale. A lot of the sites that, and the tests that I'm running they're more focused on like indexing and getting more impressions and traffic and clicks, right? So I do a lot less of like title tag changes, minor changes like that, because I don't see it. I don't see as much effect with it, with indexing and with it getting impressions as much right off the bat. I mean, obviously we still do title tags and everything, and we do a lot of comparisons based off of the competition and what's actually ranking, right? But a lot of the tests that I run more or focus more on the indexing and getting impressions. I'd love to be able to work on sites and, at Caitlin scale, right? And where we see, a couple percent changes that have a huge effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I imagine with indexation style tests, you're going from pages that were not previously indexed, so new pages, to pages that you see become indexed, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also like completely brand new sites. So I don't know how many servers I have at the moment, like little servers that I'm always building little sites on, and with minor tweaks, and seeing how you know seeing how pages are or are not getting indexed and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those can have dramatic effects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the toughest part, is trying to keep the variables as similar as possible, right? So all the servers, they're the same types of servers and similar locations, right? All on the West Coast, for example.
Amazing. Um, Guys, I just want to give a heads up for Tarun. He's a community member. He sent me an email. He would be live here today, and he just sent a hello in the chat. So I really value that,
Oh, okay.
people who engage. um, and right now, I would like to ask about Google algorithms. So Google algorithm is a black box, and the SERPs are constantly shifting. How do each of you actually isolate variables to ensure your ranking changes are strictly due to the testing you're running rather than just seasonal noise or an algorithmic update?
I'll let Yao go first. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the updates for the last 2-3 years, there's just been a lot more unannounced updates, and for me, it's just I see it as a big pain in the butt. They're constant updates that it's hard to isolate a lot of times, right? And and I'm so for me, I try to keep what I can as similar as possible. Like I said, the servers, for example, if it's a WordPress site, WordPress setup or Astro setup, the minor minor tweaks, like the things I would test would be like a internal linking strategy, right? Whether or not to internally link this way, or what kind of anchor text to use, and see how that affects not just indexing, but like or impressions and rankings.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all about controlling your variables. A lot of
Yeah.
times people will say, "Oh yeah, I've done SEO testing." And what they mean is they do before and after tests. But it's very hard to control your variables when you're doing a before or after, or like a pre-post, sometimes it's called. And you're basically making a change and then just seeing what happens. And over the time that happens, you could have Google algorithm updates, you could have bugs that go live, you could have other features or things that have changed, events, seasonality. Zero click, is a downward spiral for many
Yep.
websites right now. So how do you measure success if traffic's on a decline? Well, A/B testing. A/B testing is a great way to control for variables, because then you have two groups of pages that are very similar, right? Yeah, I was talking about like same setup, same page type, maybe if you're doing something on a web page, same high correlation between in the metric that you're measuring. So let's just say you're looking at clicks, and you want to make sure that you have tight correlation in your click trend before the test goes live. So let's say the 3 months prior, you look back and you make sure that the pages in your two groups have tight correlation, very similar trend. You don't want any anomalies, high performing pages, low performing pages. So a lot of the tools on the market will do that math for you to say, hey, I'm really interested in testing my blog post pages, or I'm really interested in my, product category pages. And so they'll find the two groups, the A and the B group, and they'll make sure they have tight correlation. And you get ready to launch your test, you launch your test, and then it will look to see whether your control group, the group that hasn't changed, does it have seasonality? Does it have a decline? If it does, then we would expect the same thing to happen to your test group. So that's how we control for seasonality and those other variables. And if your test group has less decline or more growth, then that means you've probably got a winning experience, that you found a good thing that you should probably roll out to all your pages then that apply to that test. So if your control group is very highly correlated before you launch your test with your test group, then if it goes up or down, your other group will also go up or down, but maybe a little bit more, like a little bit higher or less down than the other one, right? So that way you can detect the differences there. And if it's statistically significant, if it's enough of a difference, then you have a winner.
Yeah, and on that, obviously all those changes with seasonality and everything, I would say I've seen people cut tests very short. I think you have to allow time, because I've seen the ups and downs from both ends of the variables, and your hypothesis may be right after 2 weeks, but then 2 weeks later it may be wrong. I think you just need to account for the timing, and you have to stay on top of whether there's an update going on. If it could be an unannounced update. If you see a lot of people talking about their traffic having volatility, right? There might be something going on there. And so it's not just your test, but it's actually an outside influence.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love how you explain the A/B tests, Caitlin. That's what brings like a lot of that's what like the baggage of lots of experience, and then you can just divide them and this way it works, this way it doesn't. I'm loving this roundtable, guys. By the way,
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to add something?
No.
No. Right now, I have a question mainly for you, Yayao. So, one strategy for eliminating noise is using nonsense keywords to test ranking behaviors in a vacuum before applying them to money pages. I know you deal with a lot of content strategies and topical maps. How effective is testing concepts in a controlled nonsense environment, and how do you translate those findings into a competitive topical map strategy?
It's tough doing like the nonsense keyword testing strategies when you're looking to build a complete content strategy topical map, because there's so many factors to it. You can test little things. You can test like internal links, right, to a nonsense keyword to see if you can get that to rank, and whether internal links affect that keyword, and then on another page that same nonsense keyword and no internal links to it. So you can test that thing, but to base a topical map or content strategy on nonsense keywords is I'd say not doable. It's not possible, just because you'd have to build so much around that nonsense keyword. You'd have to build like topics and subtopics and subpages around that, right? To be able to try to support this one entity this nonsense entity that you created, right? So I think for topical map and content strategy is just not doable. But you can test a lot of things around that, around other things with them.
What can be these other things? If you can be a bit more specific.
Yeah. I mean, you can test anchors, right? With internal links, and how you phrase them. I've done a lot of testing around anchors with how you phrase anchors, not just the read more versus exact match, but partial matches. Way like here's my guide. Read this guide on this keyword versus a more natural inline key, like phrasing that as the anchor, right? And so you those types of things you can test for when you want to test on that.
Great, thank you. Right now, I have one question for you, Caitlin. Caitlin, would you like to add something to your Yao's about the testing?
About nonsense testing?
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that I've done nonsense testing. I've seen websites do things like, have very controlled environments of things that are not found anywhere else on the website, or that are only found on a new page or on a new site or a new, way of delivering content, markdown files, for example, and that can tell you interesting information. But building a strategy around nonsense, I think that would be difficult, since you usually want to just be focused on what's going to be best for your customers.
Great. Right now, I have like one question that's towards you. So in your bio, you mentioned partnering closely with engineering teams to develop tools and web experiences. And a big struggle for SEOs is getting buy-in to actually execute technical tests. What data or testing frameworks do you use to prove to stakeholders or engineering teams that an SEO test is worth their time and resources?
Yeah, it's definitely a struggle. And that's been true throughout my career. And I know it's true for many people who do SEO, but don't do engineering or don't do product. You often are having to beg for resources or negotiate for resources from product design and or engineering. And that can be an uphill battle. What I like about SEO testing is that it can really help with that battle. It can help you come prepared for those discussions with those other teams. And depending on the way you implement your SEO testing tool set, it can actually help you not be as dependent on those other teams. So, for example, there's several vendors on the market that will allow you to put one line of JavaScript code into your tag management system, or you can have your engineer do that one line of code change on all your pages across your website. And then you no longer need them to do any tests. You can set them up on your own, you can run them on your own, and you can analyze them on your own. So it gives you a lot of independence, right? So no longer do you have to ask for, I want this H1 change, or I want this template to do this. You can do all those things yourself. And it's a great eye opener, and it's a great way to gain that traction that you need to then go deploy only the tests that win. So no longer, a lot of times we have a giant roadmap, all these things we could potentially do, and you're not going to get all of them done. So you test them, and then you find out, oh, only maybe 10% were really worth doing. Then you have less stuff that you have to go to bat for, you have to negotiate resources for, and you have more information about why they're going to be successful. That really helps to convince other people, in product, engineering, design, that they should spend time focusing on supporting you in your work and your roadmap, because it comes with data. A lot of times other teams are also doing tests, right? Any email marketer, they're not just sending out one email, they're sending out two or multiple, right? Multivariate tests, they're changing out headlines, they're seeing what drives clicks. Your social media team and your paid search team, they're all doing testing. So why is it that SEO people think that they can just say to an engineering manager, you should implement these things because they're best practice? You need to have tests in order to make sure that you are on the same level as many of the other people who do digital marketing, right? If we just say, oh, it's best practice, or I read that other websites have done this and it was successful, you're not being really customer obsessed about what really works for your website, for your brands, for your customers. And the best way to do that is by running an A/B test. You could also, obviously talk to your customers. That helps too, or do a user research type of test or study. But A/B test is quantitative data. You can usually within 3 weeks. It depends on the test, but let's say within like 3 to 5 weeks, you could have a very clear, crystal clear roadmap about what you want to do with a certain template change or website or web page change.
And from like the perspective right now that AI has been growing a lot, you guys have seen any difference in this SEO testing environment, or something? What's changed so far?
Yeah, a lot's changed.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot changed. For me, I'm doing more LLM testing than, I guess, quote, SEO testing, right? Just because it's so much newer, and just because of what I'm building with Flowy, and it's just more of that for me. So yeah, Caitlin, do you have?
Yeah. LLM testing or AEO testing, GEO testing, all that. I've looked at what are the new metrics we should be testing on. Because with SEO testing, we're usually looking at Google Search Console clicks, maybe in your analytics, your SEO visits, something akin to that. Although you could look at other metrics, right? You could look at engagement metrics, conversion metrics, impressions, any number of metrics. You just pick one based on your hypothesis, what you think will be changing, and then run your test on that. But with AEO or LLM testing, we might want to consider other metrics. So citations, brand mentions, bot refer visit, or LLM referral visits, or bot user visits, bot training model visits. There's a lot of potentially new metrics that we should consider when we're switching over to AEO testing.
Yeah.
And I mentioned earlier with zero click. So zero click is that phenomenon where people no longer go to Google, look at the 10 blue links and click one to read more information about what they were asking about. Now they stay on the SERP, or in ChatGPT, they stay on ChatGPT or Claude or what have you. They're staying there in that walled garden that these companies want their customers to stay on. And the users don't need to go off site anymore. That information is brought to them in a comprehensive answer. And so that means websites around the world are losing traffic, and they have been since 2024 with ChatGPT and all that picking up speed. And so, we live in a new world in which you can't just do SEO tests anymore and expect more traffic. There's going to be a decline in traffic. It's to what degree you'll see a decline in traffic depending on what space you're in. If you're a publisher, or if you're e-commerce or B2B, you're going to see different effects at different times. So you really should be looking at that wider picture of potential metrics of what's happening off your website. SEO is very focused on bringing people to your website, but what are they doing off your website now? Because that's important. That's an important part of the sort of invisible conversations that are happening off your site that you still can get a picture into. We can know, for example, how often ChatGPT is coming to your website, retrieving information off your pages, and then giving it back to the user. They crawl your website using ChatGPT-user as their user agent. That means that there's a real person, one real person for each bot visit that was a user agent indicating -user. That's true for a couple other user agents today as well. So we do have a little bit of a picture as to what pages they're hitting, how often, and what user agent they were using. Was it a ChatGPT user or a different one? And that's different than, say, just like all the bots, like Googlebot. Googlebot comes just to see what's new, just to see what's up, right? They're coming to, there's lots of bots that are what I would call training models that are coming just to train their model. It has no correlation to a user. So you can look at that for a different reason. But if you want to see a proxy for your real users and what they're doing off your website, you could use the user agents that indicate -user in your log files. That's one thing. And then citations, brand mentions, those are interesting metrics that you can use a vendor on the market to help you with, and to look at, okay, if I make this change, let's say I do something fancy in AEO like query fan out optimization or chunk embedding. And these are sort of like trendy words, right? Let's just say we do one of those things that we think will help with AEO or LLM optimization. Well, then how are you going to measure it? What do you think will happen? It's just the same. You go back to the basics of, you have a problem, you come up with a hypothesis, and you figure out in your hypothesis what metric will change as a result. So you think you're going to get more LLM referral visits, or you think you're going to get more brand mentions. That becomes your new metric.
Thank you, Caitlin. I think you already answered this, but we have a question from Tarun. He asked, hi, Caitlin, there are a lot of recent Google updates, and how you deal with new challenges every day while you're doing SEO testing?
Yeah, great question.
Some parts of it I know you already answered, but like in a general picture.
Yeah. I mean, there's Google algorithm updates happening often, and they'll announce the major ones. They're also doing tests all the time. Every time a person goes to Google, they're in probably 14 tests. Like you're always in a test. And so the way things work on Google changes. But on average, right, you can kind of just average out over the course of time. Like Yao said, make sure you're running tests for a long enough period. If you just run it for like a few days or a week, like you don't know whether you've reached significance, but if you let it run for a little bit longer to gain that confidence, that can help. And again, with I think controlled, split testing or A/B testing, even if a Google algorithm happens mid-test, you still have your control that's also affected. And so you can see that control group is really helpful, because if it declines as a result of a Google algorithm update, or if it improves, then you'll see that reflected, and it will change the forecast for the test group as well. Your forecast will be running constantly to update and react to changes in your control group's baseline.
It's good that you mentioned those control groups, because we are running an SEO testing hackathon, and the users, they've been selecting these control groups. Well, the final results that we release, like they have the final deadline for next week, and we announce the winners on July 7th. But they are separating that, and from what we've been seeing, like it's a month test, not a week. So we know that's not that much, but it's still like so they can taste it a little bit, so we can see some results, let's say. And Yoyao is one of the judges talking about that. Guys, moving forward. So we titled the session "Stop Guessing, Start Testing." And not only because of this roundtable, is because we here at IMG, we believe strongly in SEO testing. This company was founded by Kyle, and he says that we can never assumption something. We always have to make sure of the data, and to make sure is only testing. What is one widely accepted as your best practice that your own testing has completely debunked or proven to be a waste of time in these many, many years you guys have been testing?
Yeah, I can go. Well, I've been proven wrong a lot of times. There's one test in particular I have in my mind that I thought for sure was going to be a winner, and it wasn't. It never reached statistical significance. It was pretty neutral. Wasn't a bad idea. Wasn't a good idea either. And so I think that keeps us humble of like, we don't, we're not always the experts. You often like read things on websites about case studies or tests that they've done, and you're like, oh, I want to try that out on my website. And you get a different result. And that's because different customers, different verticals, different situations. You have to, again, make sure that you don't just implement things because like someone on social media said you should, but because it's the best thing for your customers. And I can't think of any like specifics that I want to share. But like title tag tests, H1 tests, internal linking changes, where you think that this is definitely going to be the better experience, but it's not always the case.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it's hard to say that definitively that there's any one thing that's 100% debunked, right? Because in my experience, I've seen like 90%. I've seen 50-50. I've never seen 100% one way or the other. And just like Caitlin said, at different verticals, different industries, different types of sites, there's so many factors, right? And one thing I'm hearing right now in the AEO space is like, you must be indexed in Google or Bing in order to be found in an AI search platform, which I found to be false, right? Because like in one of the tools I built was to test Google and Bing and then 9 other search engines, right? AI platforms, and to see and actually compare whether or not these pages were getting indexed in Google and Bing. And in it, and it's not a big percentage. I'd say like maybe 5% of pages from ChatGPT, were not indexed in Google or Bing. So it could, that so many variables could be affecting that, right? It could be the industries I was testing, the prompts I was testing, right? So it's for me, it's hard to say anything is completely debunked or anything is completely really best practice. Obviously there are best practices like create good content, right? um, but yeah, chunking, for example, I see benefits to it, and then there are times where not so much. In terms.
Oh, we lose him?
Lost
Yeah,
my connection there.
was just 1 second. Was just 1 second. Okay.
Okay. Well, I was going to say internal linking. I've done majority of tests. Internal linking helps, but then I can think of one specific example where internal linking didn't help. Right, I made no internal links in a site, and yet that one site compared to the others did better. Right, explain that to me. I don't, so, we all know internal linking helps and, but I would say like nothing ever works 100% of the time. And that's why we all say it depends.
It all depends, right?
Yeah.
It's not a scientific 100% sure of everything. Great. Um, so, guys, we are heading to the end of this roundtable. I just have a couple final questions to ask you. So, it's about the indexing and linking hurdle. You can set up the perfect test, but it means nothing if Google won't index the page or validate the links. With indexing becoming increasingly difficult recently, what are your current tested strategies for getting your test page scrolled, indexed, and actually registering linking equity so you can gather accurate data?
I guess for me, since, I was talking about indexing a lot. For me, it's really just build the site, um, include the sitemap in Google Search Console, um, use the one by one page crawler for it, and then that's it. Hope you get indexed. I don't, I don't use a lot of the indexing services. Um, I believe that if you create good enough quality, you're going to get indexed. And again, I'd say majority of my testing sites and pages, they'll get indexed just with that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really well said, and I don't have much to add. I will just say, like, some people get confused about what the purpose of a sitemap is and what it doesn't do. So a sitemap is a really great way to get crawled, to have Bing, Google, the search engines you submit the sitemap to or that you put in your robots.txt file, so that bots crawling know about your sitemap and they can read a giant menu of links. And that's it. That's all it does, is it informs them that a new page exists. And it doesn't tell them whether it's quality, whether it's a good enough page, and it should be indexed. So you kind of graduate from crawling, which opens the door to then becoming indexed, but does not guarantee that you will be indexed, and then ranking. And each step does not guarantee the next one. You have to earn it every step of the way. You have to earn the ability to be crawled, and then indexed, and then ranked. and ranked well, right? So, especially on big enterprise sites, there's tons of pages that are crawled but not indexed. And there's not much that you can do to get them to graduate from being crawled to indexed because the search engine has just decided it's not a quality page. So you could trim the fat, you could deprecate some pages, redirect them to other pages. You could try to make them better pages, or you can not worry about it and focus on other pages. And so there's a lot of things you can do around that. But I would say when you start a test, unless you're doing like an indexation test, it probably is going to have to be more of a before after test because you're launching new pages. So you're going from 0 to something. You can't compare that. That's not equitable, right? That's not fair. So you're doing just a net new test. So you're just making sure that that the pages are getting crawled and indexed and ranked. I would say most times when I test, I'm looking at pages that have already been crawled, indexed, and ranked, that already have a certain amount of traffic that I can test on. And but you can certainly do it in different ways, right? If you want to see if different indexation methods will improve the time to indexation, you could do that. You could look at, let's say you make a new sitemap generator or you improve the way your sitemaps are built. Maybe you go from a new page being indexed in a week to a day. That would be a win, right? That has nothing to do with traffic. It has to do with time to market. Let's say you have a new line item of sneakers or a new event that's coming up. Time to market is super critical in that sense. So you could test based on time to market or time to indexation. You don't want to be caught flat-footed as an SEO team where another team has launched a new product, launched something new, and it's not showing up in Google. And that's where sitemaps can be handy, or internal linking. Internal linking is it's the better method to indicate quality. So if you have a bunch of sitemaps and they have all the links to your web pages, but you have no internal linking or you have horrible internal linking, then Google's still going to not care about all your new pages. So start at the home page and make sure all the pages you care about are just a couple of clicks away from that home page. You have a hub and spoke model with your internal linking so that you can make sure everything gets an indicator of where it lives in your site hierarchy and that it can be crawled that way. That's a better way to indicate the contextual relationship among your pages.
Yep. Oh, we lost
you. Okay, I think I lost you. Okay, that's what
I was
going to say.
It was the same thing. Just a second.
Just a second. This internal linking, Caitlin, from an interview I read of yours, like you said, is different. I don't know about internal linking. Maybe you can answer that, because when I read, I guess, one of your interview, you said that for big companies, very big enterprises, like the offsites test, the offsite part doesn't work that much. So you need to focus on site. That's completely different when we have a small company and they're trying to grow. The internal linking, you say, is quite the same.
Yeah, for any size business, you should focus on what you can control, which is your website. Offsite SEO is really hard, and I would say that social media and PR should be leading that. SEO can certainly be a big part of that, but demand generation, otherwise from an SEO it comes off spammy. It's very hard to do convincing, earning links from other websites to your website if you're trying to just get those links. But if you're doing it to earn mentions in the media, etc., that could be more successful, which is where a PR person could come in and help, or social media, right? Those people know how to get links by just earning them, by doing, or brand, right? The brand team can come up with cool campaigns that are different and that differentiate you from your competition.
Amazing. You have anything to add, Yael?
Yeah, she reminded me, obviously with indexing and trying to get indexed, internal linking definitely is a big driver. And then, if your site is already obviously indexed, then, also external links like from socials. social media links can definitely help as well. If you're trying to get a specific page indexed, the more signals that you have to it, the better.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. As we are almost ending, so I would like to know if you can give, like, briefly any advice, which advice you think you would give to someone who is just starting SEO testing, or they should already start LLM testing, as you previously said in this roundtable. What advice you would give to someone who is just starting?
Yeah, I
Go
would
first.
say start small and don't overcomplicate things, right? So I talked about the importance of the hypothesis. That's the hardest part. It should be the hardest part, is where you focus on what problem am I trying to solve, and then you write down in a full sentence or two a SMART goal, a very specific, actionable goal that says, okay, not just like a vague idea of like, I wonder if can improve mobile friendliness. It's very vague. Start very specific and say, I wonder if I implement lazy loading on these pages, if it will increase, improve our LCP by 10%. And in that case, I have a specific metric I have in mind. So your hypothesis should help lead you to the metric that you'll be testing on. Yeah, just start simple, and it could be title tag tests. I would say that would be a great place for a new SEO person to start, is just with something that you know will be very clear. And then you gain confidence, you run a few of those tests, maybe on different parts of your website. And then you're like, oh, okay, I got the hang of this. You start, branching out from there.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely start small, and definitely record everything you're doing. Write it down, like she said. Write down your hypothesis and what you are testing and the steps you're taking, because you may come back to it, a week later and say, "Uh-oh, I screwed something up," right? And so you might want to fix it. And also, I would say, with LLMs and AEO testing, a lot of times that's faster, especially if you're doing something technical to the site. If you're, adding specific JavaScript, or you're hiding, you're using accordions, for example, right? Ask the LLM, can they read that page or not? If if they can't read it, you might even have like a robot issue, or your host is blocking AI bots, that you never realize unless you actually go and test it, and test without logging in. I see people test while logged in, and a lot of those are just skewed all the time, right? Unless you are the buyer persona that you're looking for, right? That you're testing for.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you very much. And guys, if someone wants to connect or hire your services, consultancy services or SEO services, where they can find you, websites or socials?
Well,
For me, it's just
go ahead. Please go ahead.
For me, just LinkedIn and X, or Flowy.
Okay. We will post their links as well in our YouTube description and social media. Caitlin?
Yeah, I have a Medium blog. I encourage you to follow it if you're on Medium. And there's one article in particular I think would be helpful about upgrading your SEO testing framework for AEO, where I deep dive into the metrics for AEO that you can test on.
Great. So, guys, thank you so much for accepting our invite for joining this roundtable. We hope to see you soon, and have a great day.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.